Welcome to episode 19 of the AI for Churches podcast. In this episode, Bart and I discuss two practical AI tools you guys are going to love. I also chat with Dustin Stout, the creator of Magai, which is a really cool AI platform. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the AI for Churches podcast. Our goal is to equip pastors and church leaders with resources related to artificial intelligence, helpful for sermon prep, creative ministries, outreach, and more. We do this by providing exclusive insights from AI experts, church leaders, and innovators actively leveraging AI to amplify the gospel and reach more people for Jesus Christ. Here are your hosts, Bart Blair and Dr. David Thorne.
Welcome to episode 19 of the AI for Churches podcast. I'm Bart Blair here, joined by David Thorne. David, thanks for joining me on Zoom today to record another episode of this awesome podcast.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here.
You have been living in the AI world now for a while. Like how long would you say that you have been kind of like focused vocationally on like getting your head around AI and figuring out how to help us at Missional Marketing as well as churches implement AI in what we're doing? How long have you been doing this now?
Probably about less than a year, or somewhere around a year, I'd say, because we started dreaming up SermonSpark a little bit less about a year ago, and that's where we kind of started hitting the ground pretty hard and trying to figure out how we can help churches across the country better utilize AI. Okay.
We started dreaming about SermonSpark. Stop for just a second and explain what SermonSpark is. I can't believe it's only been a year. Because you've gotten so much done in SermonSpark in the last year. Explain to our audience what that is.
Yeah, sure. So SermonSpark is a free AI inspired sermon tool, or an AI sermon inspiration tool. And so we built it where with all the various tools that a pastor might use in regards to preparing their sermon, writing their sermon, and then kind of what you do after you finish your sermon. And it's been growing a lot. We're nearing, I think by the end of this week, we will bypass 3,000 subscribers. And since you brought it up, I want to give you a sneak peek of something that is going to be going live very, very soon.
Okay.
That is sermon transcription and transcription related tools.
Okay.
So
expand on that a little bit. What does that mean?
So what that means is within SermonSpark, a pastor will be able to take the YouTube link or the actual just copy the text or upload an MP4 file into SermonSpark, and SermonSpark will create the transcript for you immediately. And then what will happen is from that transcript, you'll be able to do some of the things that we talk about on this podcast. Like we'll be able to use SermonSpark to create a blog post for you, generate small group questions, generate a devotional, give you a sermon summary, give you some social media post ideas. Those are the tools that are going to launch with transcription. And it's one of those things where this is a brand new thing. And, we're kind of navigating how's it all going to work. But as we start, it's all going to be completely free. So if you're listening out there and you're wondering, how do I get a transcript of my sermon? We're about to give churches a free way to do that, which is very, very, very cool.
Okay, so to find the SermonSpark tool, how would someone do that?
You go to sermonspark.ai or sermonspark.com and sign up. And and then what happens is we'll give you a certain number of free credits, which you can use on any tool you want.
Okay. Some of the other tools that are in there are things like Greek and Hebrew, interlinear study. There's like news article searches on different topics, title suggestions for sermon topics and things like that. There's just to clarify, SermonSpark is not a tool that's going to write a sermon for you. So if that's what you're looking for, you'll have to go somewhere else. But it is a tool that's designed to help you be more efficient in your sermon prep. I use it for some things when I'm preparing my sermons. So I've used it a few times, particularly with the interlinear, the Greek and Hebrew interlinear stuff. I'm like, you know what? I want to do a little bit of deeper dive on this particular word, and I'll use SermonSpark to do that. It's just quick and easy to do. I've used SermonSpark to help me find some news-related articles on like topics for sermon illustrations. What was the other one that I just recently used it for one? Oh goodness, I can't even think of what it was. I use it. I don't use it every single week for every one of my sermons, but I probably use it, once to twice a month to get in. I'm like, ooh, this would be a thing that SermonSpark can help me with. And so I get in there and I use it from time to time. So if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you, pastors that have to write sermons on a regular basis or an irregular basis. And that, I think that's probably for some pastors who don't preach like every single week, having tools like this at your fingertip that can help build efficiencies into your sermon prep would be huge.
Or if you're on the creative team and you just want to earn some extra points with your lead pastor, hear what topic they're preaching on, go use SermonSpark, print it all out, and give them all the notes of, hey, I just thought of you. I thought maybe this could be helpful, and go that route. I think one of my favorite tools that we added is the metaphor creator, because when a pastor is preaching, they're trying to create these complex concepts like what is grace and what is, Jesus's forgiveness of our sins look like, feel like, what is that like? And so we created a tool called the metaphor creator, where you just explain what you're trying to explain, and the tool will offer you a list of metaphors or examples that you could use. And when I was preaching in the past, I was always trying to think about that. Like I'm trying to say, what is this like? What is how do you explain this concept to a person? So that's why we added the metaphor creator.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I haven't used that. I will get in there and I will give that a shot. Hey, I wanted to share with you something that I've actually been experimenting with, and I think maybe some of our audience would find this to be interesting. This is not a paid promotion because we have sponsors. If you're an AI company and you want to sponsor our podcast, you should call David. But we don't have any sponsors other than, I guess, SermonSpark is the closest thing that we got to a sponsor, and that's a free tool, and they're not giving us any money either. We're just doing this because, well, we love AI and we love the church, and podcasting is fun. So hopefully you're finding this to be a helpful and useful podcast. But I recently came across a tool called Invideo, Invideo, which for me was actually a very interesting discovery, because my church that I'm currently pastoring / planting, we don't do a video recording of the teaching on Sundays. We only do an audio recording. And it's, just not something that we feel like we need to do at this particular point, but we are doing an audio recording. And I was like, I really want to be in the space of creating some short form video content, but we're not actually recording video on Sundays. How can I do that? I mean, I champion this with churches all the time, that YouTube Shorts is a place that they need to be. YouTube Shorts is probably one of the fastest growing social platforms out there. And we're finding that churches that are creating consistent content for YouTube Shorts are being rewarded with a lot of engagement online. And so I'm asking myself the question, how can I, without a video recording of my sermons, create short form content? Well, one of the tools that I discovered, this Invideo tool, I'm just going to walk you through exactly what I did. So I took the audio of my sermon, I took the transcript, and I had Claude write 5 60-second scripts on different components of the sermon. So there were different kind of themes or different ideas, and I had it write 5 different 60-second scripts. Then what I did is I took that script and I uploaded it into Invideo. And Invideo will actually create a voiceover from that script and put music and video and images kind of behind it, so that it's got like this movement to it. And it's okay. All right. So first version was like, well, that's okay. But here's what you can do with Invideo, which is really cool and also very scary. is that I could upload a 30-second recording of myself talking to Invideo, and then it would create this video using my voice in the voiceover, which was really very cool. It sounds mostly like me. Sometimes the inflections on the words are a little bit weird and nuanced, and it's like I wouldn't say it that way. But I played it for several people, and people were like, I played it for my own son, who was like, "That's not really you." I'm like, "No, it's not really me. It's actually AI." So kind of creepy, kind of crazy, which, oh, by the way, that is why my family has a safe word, because my voice can be cloned, because there are audio and video files of me all over the internet. So we have a safe word, and we may have talked about that before. If we haven't, as a pastor, if you've got video recordings of yourself online, a lot of them, you should probably have a safe word for your family in case somebody decides to imitate you. Anyway, but what I did was I created these video shorts, and you can go in and you can, choose different music, or you can modify the script, or you can you can choose different videos or images that it uses in the background. The first pass was usually probably about 60% good. After a couple of other passes, I had a 60-second video clip that I could use. And I basically paid for a month, and I used it for a couple of weeks, and I created 10 different clips over 2 different weeks, and started posting these on my YouTube channel every day, 5 days a week. Did this for a couple of weeks. And over those couple of weeks, I had literally thousands of views of those videos. One of them had like 4,000 views in a 24-hour time period. And in one day, I added 40 new subscribers to my YouTube channel on a video that took me less than 15 minutes to create, without a video, not using an actual recording of me. It was just a cool little platform to play around in. So anyway, that's my AI tool of the month, I guess I would say. It's been a little bit hit and miss. Not everything is awesome, but considering I don't have a video to work from, it's actually a good place for me to start.
I'll just say as well that you've shared a few of those videos with me that you've made, and they're actually really cool. Very encouraging, and it is a really cool thing.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'll link to one in the show notes of the podcast here, so that if you're curious to see what I'm talking about, what it looked like, and you want to hear my AI voice and see if it sounds like me or not. My wife, like the first pass through, she's like, "That sounds just like you." And then the second pass through, she was like, "Nah, I can tell it's not you." I mean, nobody hears me talk more than my wife does. So she ought to be able to discern that when the inflections are on some of the wrong words, that it's not really the way that I would say it. But anyway,
or maybe it's the Canadian version of AI Bart, and
it could be the Canadian version of AI Bart. Yeah, I think I've got most of the Canadian out of me, but every once in a while I'll say something and people are like, "You sound like you're from Canada." Well, I did live there for 20 years, so every once in a while one of those words pops out. You got anything else, or should we tee up your interview? Dustin Stout. I'm actually excited about this one, and I'll tell you why. Sorry, I stole your thunder. I said set it up. And the reason I'm excited about this one is that we've been doing these church communications roadshow events. And one of the things that we do at our live events is we do some AI demonstration, and we talk to church communications folks and pastors and executive pastors on how they can use some AI tools. And I've actually encountered a couple of churches that are subscribers to Magai. Is that how they pronounce it? Magai. Yeah. So Magai, the platform that Dustin, did he found it? Is he a founder? Why don't you go ahead and set it up?
Yes. So yeah, Dustin Stout created Magai, and it is kind of an all-in-one AI pocket knife tool. I think that's the best. Imagine a pocket knife, but instead of knives, it is various AI platforms.
You're thinking Swiss Army knife, right?
Yeah.
Swiss Army knife with all the little tools in there, some of which are useful, some of them are not as useful.
So if you're trying to use various LLMs like Claude, ChatGPT, and you don't want to pay money to subscribe to each of them, and various image creators, and then you thought, man, wouldn't it be great if I could just subscribe to one tool that had all of them together? That's Magai. So that's what Dustin Stout created. And he has his heart and his background is really from the church. And it's really cool to just chat with him about how can AI be used in the church context, because he's added in all these tools. So there's all these tools there. And so we definitely talk through how they can be used. One thing I was going to mention, Bart, you mentioned church communications group, and road shows.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening, Bart and I work for a company called Missional Marketing. And Missional Marketing, it has a three major kind of companies that it's connected with and that we kind of own and oversee. Missional Marketing handles church outreach and helping churches to be found online. We are experts in helping churches reach local people online so they will visit your church for the first time. That's what Missional Marketing does. We have AI for Churches, which is, if you're listening to this, that's what AI for Churches is. And we also build software like SermonSpark, which we just mentioned. And then we have a group called the Church Communications Group, which is a company that began as a Facebook group that has a ton of people in it. And in that group, they also do stuff to help church communicators at every level. And then as a part of that, we are doing road shows where we are taking what church communication does and going around the country and inviting 50 people to 100 people to say, let's get in a room for a few hours and talk about what are the things you need to do as a church communicator to help your church improve their church communications processes. Did I get all of that correct, Bart?
Yeah, I think you did. And I appreciate you doing that because sometimes, I suffer from the curse of knowledge and I talk about all these things, expecting everybody to really know and understand what they are. And maybe it was a little ambiguous for those that are listening if they don't have the context for all that. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Speaking of getting people together in rooms to learn things together, you've got your Facebook group, the AI for Churches Facebook group. Are you also trying to facilitate some cohorts and some other things? Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah.
Allowed to?
Of course. Yeah. So there's two main ways. Like churches come to us and say, I don't know where to start and where do I go next? So we've created two main pathways where a church can kind of take next steps. One is they can just meet with me and kind of do a consult process, which we just take about 2 or 3 hours. We jump on a call, have a discovery call, and then figure out what kind of training we need to do to help your church learn about how to apply AI. The second option is if a church just says, I just want to meet with other people and kind of talk about and learn together about AI stuff. So we are starting AI cohorts. As fast as they fill up, we're going to start new ones. So I'm looking to start another one soon. And as soon as that one fills up, we're going to start another one. On both of those things, you can go to our website, which we'll put in the show notes, and it's the AI with dashes.com. And you can sign up as interested in one of those things. And then I'll follow up with you and give you some more information about what that looks like.
Okay, that would be really excellent. Yeah, I've seen some of your posts and some engagement that you've had with people online about these cohorts. It seems like there's some folks interested in doing that. So thought that I would give a shout out to that. All right, we've probably talked way too long on this intro. For those of you who've made it all the way through the intro, thank you. This is just the intro. If you haven't subscribed wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, make sure that you do that. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe. We'd love to engage with you there as well. So if you have any comments or feedback, feel free to leave a message, leave a note in the comments section on the YouTube channel, and we'd be happy to engage with you there. Otherwise, let's kick this thing off. Here's David Thorne's recent interview with Dustin Stout.
Hi, everyone. This is David Thorne here, and I'm here with Dustin Stout, the founder of Magai. And Dustin, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I was telling Dustin that I've heard his name a bunch of places. It's one of those things where either he or Magai kind of pop up in various spots. And I'm like, I need to talk to this guy because his name or the platform he's created keeps popping up. So thanks so much for taking some time to chat on the podcast today. And I would just love to start if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you have created in Magai.
Sure. I mean, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Small town boy, big town dreams. Moved to Hollywood when I was fresh out of high school. Went to acting school to pursue acting. Found out real quick that it's a hard industry to break into. So I ended up actually working for a church for a small time. I was the youth director for a satellite campus of a very large 15,000 member church. Had a target audience, right? I had a certain demographic that I had to reach to grow my ministry. And just so happened at that time, it was peak social media. So I learned how to leverage online communities, social media, started blogging, taught myself how to build websites, all for the purpose of reaching an audience for the kingdom. And in doing so, people started to notice that I kind of knew what I was doing and were asking me for advice on how they can leverage the online world for their business. And so that little bit of knowledge and me help trying to learn how to grow my ministry actually turned into a side gig of me taking on clients and consulting businesses on how to use social media marketing, digital marketing, SEO, and web design to grow their businesses. Long story short, budget cuts happened at the church. I had to leave that role and go find a, quote, real job. And eventually started my own consultancy. I had enough clients where I could just do that full-time, work for myself from home full-time, and was doing that for the last 12, 15 years. What is it? It's 2024 now. I started consulting in, I think, 2011 and had a full-time graphic design job for about 2 years. In 2014, I left that full-time job. So it's been about 10 years now, I guess, that I've been full-time working for myself from home. Now, in that process, I realized something about how God built me. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I'm the kind of guy that spends an hour and a half trying to decide how round the button should be. And that kind of proclivity doesn't really extend itself to scaling a service-based business. Consulting, it's very hard to delegate when you're a perfectionist, and it's very hard to, do things in a timely and efficient manner because you really want it to be perfect. So I realized God gave me this revelation that, like, if I were to channel all that perfectionism into building one product that helps many people instead of building one website that helps one business, it would be a much more effective use of my time and energy. So I started building digital products in that same year, 2014, just on the side. And eventually that company got very successful and I could focus on that full time. Left that company in 2020, right mid-pandemic, and decided to go and try and figure out what my next digital products would be. Had two really great ideas that failed absolutely miserably. And for about 2 to 3 years, I was really in one of the darkest places I've ever been in. Everything was failing. I lost more than $65,000. I was not sure how I was going to pay my mortgage. I was struggling with depression. My wife had just gone through a whole bunch of really strange and bizarre and really undeterminable health issues. I struggled with thoughts of suicide. I was praying that God would just take me home because I couldn't figure out why I was still here on earth. And it just seemed like it would be better to be home with my Lord. So that dark place left me in a position where I had no funds, no resources, no ability to outsource a lot of the development that I had done for my previous products. And ChatGPT comes along. And almost instantly, and this time I was starting to take on clients again because I needed to find a way to pay the bills. And when ChatGPT came along, November 2022, and I started using it, I instantly realized this is going to change everything. I'd used AI tools before. They were all pretty bad and didn't really work well, but this was different, significantly different. And I think the world realized that because it was so massively adopted instantly. So I started using it prolifically for my own work, my client work, and I realized, this is really great, but man, I wish ChatGPT had this ability. I wish I could put things into folders. I wish I could search and filter things. I wish I could do X, Y, and Z with it. And instantly I was like, you know what? Maybe I can make a better version of this, even if it's just for myself to work more effectively with clients. And so with zero resources, zero ability to hire developers, I went on just I don't know how else to explain it, but like a tunnel vision sprint of I'm going to figure out how to build the thing that I want and use the technologies that OpenAI makes accessible and all these other AI models make accessible. And build a better version of ChatGPT. And that's kind of the genesis of the idea for Magai. I saw what it could do, but I saw greater potential of how it could be used for everyday people using it for work and for business. And I wanted to create a set of tools that would not only give them access to the best of the best AI tools from multiple companies, but also give them organizational tools, allow them to have multiple people in their teams, and make it easier to use and leverage these tools for the average everyday person who's not a developer.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's one of the things that with pastors and church leaders, and really just, let's be honest, people in general, what I always think about, it's kind of like with an AI, when they sit in front of that prompt, and it's like they go into Walmart and they see the whole store.
Yep.
And it's like, yes, I can do everything, but I don't know what to do.
Right. What does everything actually mean?
Right. And I guess so let's focus on just Magai. And could you tell us a little bit more about like what did you add in there? Like what are things that you built into Magai? And then we'll get into what are specific ways that you think pastors could use AI. But let's just start with Magai itself. So yeah, tell us about what tools you added and why.
Well, I think one of the first things that I added was the ability to search and filter. Because if you are using ChatGPT or any AI chatbot in a large amount, you've undoubtedly had this experience where you're like, oh, wait, I did something last week and it generated something really good. What was that thing I made? Oh, maybe I can find it. And then you end up having to search this incredibly long list of chats or maybe a long thread of a chat. And you're like, I can't find what I'm looking for. Why can't I find what I'm looking for? Well, there's no ability to search through your chats. There's no ability to put them into folders and keep them organized. I found myself having to do that a lot. And that was like one of my biggest pain points was like, I just want to search, filter, and organize my chats because I'm a pretty organized person when it comes to creating content. I mean, obviously I'm working with clients, so I have to like keep client projects separate. And then I'm an entrepreneur, so I have several different businesses or ideas that I'm working on, projects that I'm working on. I want to keep those separate. So organizational tools, things that we're used to doing. We're used to working with file systems and folder systems. We're used to working with Google Drive or Dropbox, where we can search for the thing that we need. So those are some of the first things I built in. And then on top of that, I had a VA at the time, and I didn't have any other staff, but I wanted her to be able to access my chats and maybe pick up where I left off, or maybe have her start a conversation, and then I'll check it and finish it and refine whatever the results are to use them in whatever, it's a blog post or social media content. So I wanted to invite her in without having to pay for a whole another subscription, right? So that was the other thing, is team features, the ability to invite team members without added cost. So those were like the biggest catalysts. But I think on top of that, all these image generators were popping up at the time too. You had the Midjourneys and Stable Diffusions and then DALL-E, and they were all separate apps and tools. And I quickly realized, like, I'm going to have a subscription to that. I'm going to have a subscription to that. I'm going to need this subscription over here. And I thought, how insane is that? Let's just bring them all into one app. And so I created an image generator inside of Magai, leveraging in the same way the same technology. So we're pulling in ChatGPT's GPT-3 and 4, those AI models. We're also pulling in DALL-E 3 and Stable Diffusion. And they're all the same AI models that you would pay individual subscriptions for, but they're in one interface and one subscription, making it much easier to manage and making it much more convenient for you when you're actually doing it. When you're generating content, it's nice to have one place where it's all sort of collated and stored and searchable and organizable. So those are kind of the big pain points. But then, you get deeper down the rabbit hole, you start to learn, how these AI models work and how to make them work better. And that really led me to the discovery of personas, which is one of our flagship features, the ability to sort of focus the AI's expertise and knowledge in one particular arena so that whatever goal or objective you have is 10, 100 times better than if you were to just ask it, a generic AI chatbot. It's almost like creating a fine-tuned version of the AI model just by utilizing this idea that we call a persona, which is a special set of instructions that the AI follows. And that's a whole podcast episode in itself. I don't know if we have the time to really dive into that high level, but layering in stuff like that, layering in the ability to have custom instructions, which are similar to personas, but custom instructions in the sense that you can give it a set of static information that it always knows about you, your organization, your business. And that way you don't have to like pre-feed it the same knowledge over and over again. You can kind of use the custom instructions so that the AI always knows XYZ about you or your organization every time you start a conversation. So little things here and there. It started to really snowball once I really dove in and started talking to our users and saying, how are you using this? What's missing? And, what are the kind of things that would make your life easier? And then in just me really playing with it and saying, how can I make this better, more intuitive and easier to use for users, even if they don't have the deep-seated obsessive knowledge about AI and how it works as I do, because I'm in it every day.
Yeah. And for those of you who are listening, we did have a podcast where we went into personas a few podcasts ago. And I think Magi was actually mentioned on that podcast as well. So that's if you haven't learned about personas, definitely go back and listen to that episode. Let me ask you this question and these few questions in case this is, hopefully this isn't too difficult of a question, but do you have a favorite large language model in regards to what's your go-to right now? Obviously it can change tomorrow for word generation and image generation. What's your favorite right this second?
So when it comes to chat models or large language models, LLMs, it really depends on the task. Because I've found that each model has their strengths and weaknesses. For example, ChatGPT's, the GPT models, I call them the GPTs, they tend to be more creative. So if I need ideas, if I need iterations, if I need concepts outside of my normal thinking patterns, I will go to GPT first for creative elements. Or in the example of like a blog post, GPT will help me create the outline and the ideas and the talking points and sort of, the nuts and bolts of like helping me flush out an idea. But when it comes to actually writing the content, once we have like established sort of a baseline of information that we're going to build upon, I actually switch over to Claude because Claude tends to be much better at maintaining the integrity of information. It's not as creative as GPT, but it's much better with accuracy and being safe in terms of like not changing details that should not be changed. So I tend to go with Claude when I'm building a long form piece of content. And then when it comes to like structured articles specifically, I found Gemini Pro to be the best at this. Because it's from Google. Like if they know anything, they know how to structure web articles, right? So I found that Gemini is just the best at like structuring an article. If I'm in the, say SEO optimization phase of long form piece of content, but yeah, it really kind of just depends. Ultimately, like I think most of my conversations start with GPT 4o, the newest, most advanced model.
Yeah.
But when I'm finalizing a piece, it's usually Claude 3 Opus, their most Anthropic, most advanced model, because it tends to be the best linguistically and has the highest level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
In terms of image models, I would say my favorite right now is Leonardo. And for anyone who hasn't explored Leonardo, they are essentially in my opinion, the most fascinating company in AI to watch right now because they're very community focused. And what they're essentially doing is taking these stable diffusion models that are readily available and they're creating different fine-tuned versions of them for very specific purposes. And I've looked at a lot of different companies, dozens and dozens of different AI image generators and models. And theirs always just tend to be the best. They work the best. They have the most amount of tools. And what also makes them very something that I really love is they make it easy for developers to integrate their product into theirs. So we have Leonardo within Magai. Even though you can go get your own Leonardo subscription, they have a brilliant API that we can tap into, and we can allow our users to access Leonardo from inside Magi, which makes it great for me. It makes it great for the users, and it's a win for everybody in this scenario. So I really appreciate that. There are some other image generators on the market that shall not be named that may have the best AI image model, but they force everybody into a Discord interface that is just stupid. And they are hostile towards developers. They will not let anyone use their technology outside of their, walled garden, their walled Discord garden. So dumb.
Yeah. They whom shall not be named, but yes. That's really interesting. Yeah, Leonardo is one I only learned about 6 months ago. Like I didn't know a lot about it. So if you're listening in, it's leonardo.ai, or you're also obviously able to go through Magi, and it's already in there. So that's another option as well.
And they're really interesting. I mean, they're utilizing Stable Diffusion, which Stable Diffusion 3 just came out. It's probably so in my opinion, the top 3 models right now are that shall not be named on Discord, and the Stable Diffusion 3 and DALL-E 3. So those are kind of the 3 biggest ones right now. Leonardo leverages all of the Stable Diffusion models and fine tunes them. So, I would probably throw Stable Diffusion 3 just vanilla, straight out of the straight Stable Diffusion 3 model as one of the best models as well. And we're working on getting that into Magi soon. We have the previous version of Stable Diffusion, but we're now working on version 3, which is exceptionally good. It's really good at photorealism, and it's really good at text, which is like still the thing that's AI hasn't fully gotten yet, but it's getting really close to getting consistently good at. So.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a LLM's arch enemy is visual text right now. We'll eventually get there. I mean, soon enough, but we're getting there. Day by day, it's getting better and better, or month by month, whatever you want to say. That's awesome, and that's really helpful for. I mean, people listening to this. That's kind of like that Walmart experience of like, where do we even start, and just naming some of those big names. Why you might go to Claude versus ChatGPT versus Gemini, and if they're in Magi, of course, they have all of those options. But it's helpful to even think through why you might go to one over the other. So how about let's transition to pastors and their use of LLMs, including image generators and word generators. Talk me through
clarification there, because I want to make sure nobody gets confused. LLM stands for large language model, and that is strictly the text generators.
Yeah.
AI image generators are a different type of AI and not in the LLM category.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Yep. That's what we're saying is listening to the various words. And so thanks for saying that.
Terminology. It's hard. Hard to not get jargony.
Yes.
I really try not to.
So for pastors who are listening to this, walk us through how about just some very simple things you'd say, like, hey, based on the stuff that pastors do every week, here are some ways that a pastor should definitely use large language models and image generators. And maybe some things like if they were in Magi, what are some simple things that you might suggest that they do?
Well, there's a handful of obvious things right away. Obviously, pastors, if you're leading the church, if you're teaching on a regular basis, AI is really great with helping you come up with sermon content. Maybe you have illustrations, you're having a hard time coming up with what's the right illustration to drive this point home. It's really great with brainstorming that. You can even, with the right persona engaged, you can help it do some research, some biblical research, some etymology, or some hermeneutics. It can really be good because it has this huge data set that it's working from. So, helping with sermon prep, helping with sermon research, cutting that sermon up into social media content, which is something that I told churches to do for years. You should be turning every Sunday sermon into at least 50 pieces of content. Turn it into a blog post. You can turn it into social media content. You can turn it into, graphics and so forth. So, chopping it up into different types of content, repurposing it is the jargony word. So those are like the most obvious. And then image generators, of course, coming up with visuals for, really interesting things. Just try to describe some of the stuff in Revelation and put it into an image generator. You'll get some fun stuff. But some of the things I think pastors don't think about, and they really should, because it's super helpful. Every church I've ever been a part of always has small groups, right? They have something they call, small group. And in these small groups, in many cases, not in every case, they're discussing the Sunday sermon, and maybe they have some discussion questions, right? I love you all who are building the kingdom, but some of these discussion questions are so bad. They're just not good. Things like, why should we follow Jesus? Come on, guys. Because it's a really hard job, right? It's a really hard thing to do. Like, how do we come up with questions based on this sermon that's really going to spark a deep conversation? It's hard to do, and I get it. And you have a million things to do as a church leader. I get it. So use AI to help you come up with better small group questions, discussion questions. Ask the AI, here are the ideas I have for small group questions. Are there any ways we can make better questions that would cause deep connection and great discussion? Just ask the AI to help you refine these questions. Another good example of how I'm thinking about using it right now for ministry. I'm thinking about starting an apologetics group, and be like a weekly training on apologetics. And if you want to run scenarios where you are taking objections from people who might object to Christianity, or maybe you're teaching about sharing the gospel, evangelism, you could create a persona that would be, an unchurched person. You tell the AI that you are an atheist, or you are an agnostic, and you think this and that about religion and spirituality, or God, or Jesus. Create a persona of the person that you want to engage with, or the type of people you want to engage with, and have a conversation as if you were almost like a role-playing scenario. Have a conversation with that target person and see what kinds of objections you get. So then you can prepare for those objections. Now, this is something debaters do a lot. Whenever they go into a debate, they anticipate what their opponent is going to say, the objections they're going to have, and they train themselves for it. So that's one great way. Use AI personas as your target audience, someone you're talking to, and pull out insights by engaging in a conversation with them. This is kind of like audience research. So that's one, I think, unlock that I think a lot of pastors wouldn't think of, because they're just thinking about teaching and training. Another one is, so one of the things we built into Magai was the ability to automatically pull in a YouTube video transcript and be able to work with it. So a lot of our churches that use Magai, they will put their sermon on YouTube, and usually there's staff members, not necessarily the lead pastor, who is turning that sermon into other pieces of content. So with Magai, you can just paste a link to your YouTube video of the sermon. Magai will automatically bring in that sermon, and then you can start asking it questions about the transcript, or have it do things with the transcript. And there's things like create the social media post and stuff. So that's one way that Magai makes things like that a little bit easier, a little bit faster. And gosh, I know there's 1,000 more. I've had so many discussions, but
I'm just saying that as you like reload, these are all awesome. And I love those ideas. I mean, even the idea of a pastor chatting with a persona on a topic, whether it's an apologetic topic or a sermon thought or idea, to see how might a person respond to that. Mm-hmm. It's one of it's completely untapped. Like, it's one of those things that pastors that, like, they're writing this sermon and they're like, how would a person respond to this? And to be able to actually chat with a persona that represents that exact person, is just so helpful, that probably like very, very few to almost no people are doing.
Yeah. And then I guess another way that sparks is, if you're anybody comes up to you with a question about your sermon that maybe, they want to dive a little deeper and you don't know the question. I mean, a lot of times as Christians, we get questions about the Bible or about Jesus, about God, Trinity, high level concepts. And we don't always know we might understand the concept ourselves, but not know how to articulate it in a way that is maybe would make sense to somebody who doesn't understand that. So typing that person's question into the AI and asking the AI to, or maybe typing out your response, how you would respond to the question, having the AI write it in a way that's easier to understand. That's also a really great unlock. I mean, I've had plenty of questions from my kids, right, about really high level Christian concepts that I know how to explain to an adult, but I don't necessarily know how to explain to a 6-year-old. So writing my response to the AI, sharing, this is what my 6-year-old son asked me. Here's my answer. Can you make my answer make sense to a 6-year-old? That's a really great way.
Yeah. I love these. These are really helpful. I really appreciate that. One other just kind of caveat or thinking through ways that people can use these platforms. Thinking outside the church. So as if you're a pastor, our thought automatically goes to like pastor related things. However, I do also think that the more a person just uses it and knows how to use the platforms in general outside of church related stuff, and the more it kind of gets in your blood, then the more you might use it in church related stuff. Mm-hmm. So how about one or two just kind of interesting ways or helpful ways a person might use like platforms like Magai outside of church stuff for just everyday life stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could go through my list of chats and I could probably pull out a ton of stuff. But first thing that comes to mind is, we play games with our kids and we want to do fun activities for our kids. So like coming up with ideas of fun activities to do with our kids. I had several times I've had the AI build a scavenger hunt for us. And so it would come up with all the things to find on a scavenger hunt. I actually created a persona that was a game. So I created a persona that is like a movie quiz, and it's instructed to give us clues about a movie, and we have to guess it. And so that's a fun game we can now play just by activating that persona. Back to the idea of like, how do I respond to people? I had responses that I need to make, say, to my wife when we're having a heated fellowship. And I had to write, my response that I wanted to say and had the AI write it in a more loving and empathetic way. So those are some.
I would love to see that actual chat of like that. That'd be a priceless chat to have of like, hey, I am right, but I'm trying to tell my wife so she will not be. I would love. That would be the most amazing chat to see, like to see behind the scenes. Of course, you need to burn it as soon as it's written. But I'm just saying that'd be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many applications. I mean, asking it for recipes. Telling it I have X, Y, and Z ingredients. What can I make with this?
Oh yeah. I'll give you an example. I just used that yesterday. So I had this tiki masala sauce, and I was curious and I had coconut milk, and I was curious, could I like add coconut milk to the tiki masala sauce? And it was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. I asked it, and then I was cooking with some vegetables. I was curious if sweet potatoes would be good in, as an added vegetable. It said, yes, that is a very common way. And then when I was making the sauteing the vegetables, if anyone's listening to this during lunchtime, maybe it's going to make you hungry, but I was sauteing the vegetables. I was curious what spices are typically used in tiki masala so I could add those spices to the vegetables while I cook it. And it gave me the whole list of spices. So I added those in. So it was such a wonderful way to just unpack the process of cooking while I was cooking. Mm-hmm. And it was just amazing. So helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought this part of the conversation up, because in so many of these interviews that I do and when I'm sharing with people, I often tell them, like, the more you use it, the more you realize you can use it. the more your brain sort of realizes and awakens to, all these other possibilities that I can use it for. And society's gone through the same exact growth curve. If you're, like me, an elder millennial, you've gone through the Google awakening, right? Like the whole online life before Google and then online life after Google. We had to go through this learning curve. Like, what do I? At the beginning, I'm just searching Google for Charlie bit my finger. That was it. It was funny videos. That's what we were looking for. But then we realized, I can search for restaurants. I can search for information about, leopards in Africa. I don't know which biggest, but the more we use it, the more we realize we can use it for. And AI has that same learning curve. So the real thing is just anything that you think of that a text conversation with somebody who is infinitely wise and knowledgeable would help. Try using AI.
Yeah. I've downloaded the ChatGPT app, which I talk to, and I love using it if I'm in the car. And I've done it where I've asked it to play 20 questions or help me to create a guessing game, and just to get time in the car to go faster. My sons and I have had plenty of conversations with ChatGPT on that kind of stuff. Or a question comes up, and instead of as long as it's with the question we're asking is longer, older than 2 years or whatever, year and a half, 2 years, then I'm going to ask ChatGPT first before I ask Google. And I can just bring up the app on my phone. We ask it right there, and we get the answer immediately. Mm-hmm. So those are some ways where, as time progresses and as the time of what knowledge it has gets closer and closer to up to date with what's actually happening, it's our use of ChatGPT will continue to go up, while reasons to go to Google may start going down.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to that. I think Google is not going anywhere soon, because one thing that is for sure is these LLMs do make lots of mistakes when it comes to factual information. And so I would always encourage, never use it for anything factual that is high stakes factual. Even recipes, to an extent, you need to be a little cautious. But if it's like ingredients and suggest things to make it, is probably fine. But when it comes to like baking stuff that has sort of high stakes results, if you get it wrong, definitely fact check it. And using it, especially again with pastors, check Bible references. If it does give you Bible references, make sure it's the right one. And don't rely on it exclusively for your interpretation at all, because it will interpret them wrong. Yes. So yeah, I mean, factual stuff, you still need to go to Google and research these things. And that's why I was really excited to integrate into Magai web searching capabilities. So when you ask inside of Magai, when you ask it about something that requires new data or up-to-date information, the AI can actually make the choice saying, this requires real-time new information. I'm going to go do a web search, and it's going to search the web for the top results on that topic. And it's going to sort of assimilate all of that information on the web pages that it found. And then it's going to make its response according to what it found. And then it's going to give you the links that you can actually follow those links and say, this is what it's pulling from. Is that right and correct? And that was really important for us to build into Magai, because, getting facts right is important. And, Google is still needed in that sense, where we need to find good sources of information that's reliable.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool you built that. Just for as we kind of think about now transitioning to what's ahead. So I'm curious about where, what's the next stop on this train ride? And, we have things like the newest version of ChatGPT that, they keep promising these things that are going to be coming out soon, quote unquote. We have Sora and the other, video generators. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious about where do you see this train going next in this world?
So what I see happening is kind of what I started to see happening right at the beginning. The problem with AI before ChatGPT was every AI tool that was out there, they were all copywriting tools because that's all that was possible. They were all predicated on templates, specialized templates that did one task and sort of one way of doing a task. And they worked great for some people. They didn't work great for others. Essentially, it was like trying to fit my creativity and ideas and objectives into somebody else's box. And that's why it was never mass adopted. When generative AI or ChatGPT, conversational AI is the term, when it came onto the scene, it wiped out the need for templates entirely. You could just tell the AI what you want, and it would make the decision based on its huge, vast knowledge to give you exactly what you want without having to go through a template and sort of, fit your idea into somebody else's way of solving the problem. And the more and more AI advances, it sort of proves this idea that it's really moving towards one assistant, one omni-capable, which is what GPT-4o stands for, omni, one omni-capable AI model. And that means it's going to be able to process, right now it can access all kinds of information, all kinds of, frameworks and so forth. It has all that knowledge in one model. And now they've introduced the vision models, which they can now see images, so they can interpret visual input. And now with the addition of, the technical term is function calling, but the AI has the ability to sort of call other AI models. That's why inside ChatGPT, you can now generate images. It's not ChatGPT that's generating the image. ChatGPT is calling the DALL-E model and having the DALL-E model do it for you. So like bringing all of these generative modalities into one place is going to get closer and closer. So we've got the audio in ChatGPT, input, output. We're soon going to we have the image input output soon. I can definitely see them doing video input output inside the chat. So I think it's all moving towards an omni-capable model. And that means that, a lot of these, specialized tools that are sort of one-trick ponies, they're going to become less and less valuable unless they find a way to really, specialize in that individual thing. Because as soon as everything becomes omni and you can do everything from one model, it's sort of like the Swiss Army knife. Like you have everything in one place. Why would you, go to another app that has just one of those blades or one of those utilities when, it's actually using the Swiss Army knife to give you that one blade, but it's only giving you the one blade. So I think, a lot of the future holds an all-encompassing AI interface that does it all, does all the mediums of input output. And I think we'll see that probably in the next year. By the end of this year, I think we'll see, at least the promises that OpenAI made in their recent announcement that they released like 20% of what they actually demonstrated. But I think we'll get all of that by the end of the year, and I think very soon we'll also get the video models inside of ChatGPT. And we're at Magai, we're actively working on right now a complete overhaul that will bring all of the capabilities of Magai into a single, beautiful, unified interface, so that it's not separate pages or separate mechanisms that you're using. You're finding a way to have one interface, one way to interface with AI that gives you access to all the tools that you need to get all the modalities that you need.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Thanks for sharing that. And it is kind of crazy. I just, like, by the time we publish this podcast, like even the things you mentioned about your favorite LLMs or image generators, I wanted you to add the caveat. That's as of this second,
as of today,
as of the day that we are recording this, because it seriously could totally change in the next few weeks, months, and it feels like every 6 months. I mean, we could re-record this podcast in 6 months, and the conversation would be completely different. Mm-hmm. And it's like the speed at which it is developing, which is one of the things that churches are just struggling with, is how do we keep like this? We have yet to see a technology that has developed this quickly and this exponentially.
Mhm.
and it's always challenging to keep up with. So
yeah, I agree. It's why I'm starting to get so many gray hairs. Is trying to keep up with it all.
I was going to comment that I definitely admire your hair, and I would like some of it. I have
If I
none.
could, I'd send some over, but that might be kind of gross.
Yeah. But cool. Hey, Dustin, thanks so much for the chat, and it is kind of cool. I love hearing about a person who's kingdom minded, who has developed a great software and that people can use. It's helpful to everyone, and including pastors. And just I can't wait to hear what's next, and definitely keep us updated on new things coming out. And thanks so much for the chat.
Absolutely, it's been my pleasure.